Sayas to Bullies mock the quiet transfer student. They had no idea he's an MMA champion. The moment Jackson Walker stepped through the doors of Westridge High School, he knew he'd become a target. At 15, he stood just 5'6" with a slight build that made him appear even younger. His round glasses, oversized hoodie, and tendency to keep his eyes down when walking the halls practically screamed fresh meat to the predators that roamed the social hierarchy. What no one at Westridge knew, what no one could possibly guess, was that behind Jackson's quiet demeanor and unassuming physique lay years of intensive mixed martial arts training. Back in his hometown of San Francisco, Jackson had been the junior state champion 3 years running, training under his father, a former UFC fighter turned coach. The move to this small Midwestern town had been sudden, prompted by his mother's new job opportunity, uprooting Jackson from his training gym and the friends who knew his capabilities. But Jackson's parents had raised him with strict principles. Martial arts were for discipline, protection, and last resort, never for intimidation, never to show off, and absolutely never to start fights. Martial arts doesn't give you permission to hurt others, his father had always said. It gives you the responsibility not to. So when Jackson arrived at Westridge High, he kept his background to himself. His goal was to blend in, make a few friends, and finish the school year without drama. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The cafeteria at Westridge High was a carefully mapped territory. Each table represented a different social stratum, arranged in concentric circles of status around the center table, the domain of Brady Wilson and his followers. At 17, Brady was the undisputed king of Westridge. Captain of the football team, blessed with the kind of confidence that came from never knowing failure, he ruled the school with casual cruelty. His lieutenants, Marcus Johnson and Tyler Reed, followed his lead with vicious enthusiasm. Marcus was nearly as large as Brady, a wall of muscle with a perpetual sneer. Tyler was slighter, but compensated with an extra measure of meanness, always eager to prove himself. Jackson, unaware of the social cartography, made his first mistake on his very first day. Lunch tray in hand, seeking an empty spot, he committed the cardinal sin of crossing in front of Brady's table without proper deference. "Hey, new kid," Brady called out, his voice cutting through the cafeteria chatter. "You lost?" Jackson turned, blinking behind his glasses. "No, just looking for a place to sit." Brady smirked, exchanging glances with Marcus and Tyler. "What's your name, Squirt?" "Jackson." "Well, Jackson," Brady drawled, "there's a table tax for walking through our zone, $5. Several nearby tables quieted, students watching with a mixture of sympathy and relief that they weren't the target today. "I don't have $5. Jackson said quietly, already calculating how to extract himself from the situation without escalation. Brady's smile widened. "That's unfortunate, Marcus. I think we need to show the new kid how things work around here." Marcus stood, all 6'2" of him, unfolding like a predator rising from the grass. He stepped forward, deliberately bumping into Jackson's tray. The lunch, an unappetizing serving of spaghetti and a carton of milk, upended across Jackson's shirt and jeans. "Oops," Marcus said, feigning concern. "You should really watch where you're going, new kid." Laughter rippled through the cafeteria. Jackson stood perfectly still, feeling the cold milk seeping into his clothes. The old Jackson, the champion, would have had 3 ways to put Marcus on the ground before the milk reached his socks. But that wasn't who he was here. Not yet. Breathe center. This doesn't matter. He set his empty tray down and grabbed a handful of napkins, cleaning himself as best he could. Without another word, he walked away, the sound of Brady and his friends' laughter following him out. From a corner table, a girl with dark hair pulled into a messy bun watched the scene unfold. Ash Rodriguez had seen this movie before. She'd been at Westridge long enough to recognize the start of a new victim's journey through Brady's torment. Something about the new kid's reaction struck her as unusual, though. No anger, no fear, just patience. Interesting. Mrs. Jenkins' English class was Jackson's brief respite. He'd always loved literature, the way it offered escape and insight in equal measure. They were studying The Count of Monte Cristo, and something about Edmond Dantes' patient plotting resonated with Jackson's current situation, though he had no plans for elaborate revenge. New kid. Jackson looked up from his book to find Tyler Reed standing over his desk after class. The classroom had emptied, quickly leaving them alone. "Brady wants to see you after school behind the gym." Jackson closed his book. "I'm busy after school." Tyler's eyebrows shot up, clearly not used to refusal. "It wasn't a request. Brady doesn't like being ignored." "I'm not ignoring him. I'm declining his invitation." Tyler's face reddened. He leaned down, getting in Jackson's face. "Listen, you little... Is there a problem, Mr. Reed?" Mrs. Jenkins had returned to the classroom, her gaze sharp over her reading glasses. Tyler straightened immediately. "No, ma'am, just welcoming the new student." "How thoughtful. Now, run along to your next class." With a final glare at Jackson, Tyler retreated. Mrs. Jenkins gave Jackson a look that suggested she wasn't fooled. "Mr. Walker, a word of advice. Some students here mistake cruelty for strength. Don't let them convince you of the same." Jackson nodded. "I won't, Mrs. Jenkins." But declining Brady's invitation had consequences. The next morning, Jackson found his locker vandalized, crude. Words and drawings spray-painted across it. Throughout the day, he was tripped in the hallway, had his backpack stolen and emptied into a toilet, and was shoved against walls whenever teachers weren't looking. Through it all, Jackson maintained his composure. Each night, he returned home to his family's small apartment and trained in the makeshift gym his father had set up in their garage. Heavy bag work, grappling drills with his father, meditation. With each session, he released the day's frustrations, centered himself, and reminded himself of his principles. "How's the new school?" his father asked one evening, holding the heavy bag as Jackson delivered a precise combination of strikes. "Fine," Jackson replied, not meeting his father's eyes. James Walker was not easily fooled. "That's your mother's word. Fine means something's wrong, but you don't want to talk about it." Jackson sighed, dropping his hands. "Just the usual new kid stuff. I'm handling it." His father studied him for a long moment. "There's a difference between walking away from a fight because you're afraid and walking away because you choose peace. One is weakness, the other strength." "I know, Dad. Just remember, protecting yourself isn't the same as starting trouble." Jackson nodded, returning to his drills with renewed focus. His father's words echoed in his mind. By the third week at Westridge, Jackson had developed a routine for avoiding Brady and his crew when possible. But PE class offered no escape. Coach Brunner believed in building character through competitive sports, which mostly meant looking the other way when stronger students dominated weaker ones. Today's torture was dodgeball, Brady's favorite hunting ground. Teams were chosen, and predictably Jackson was picked last. Even more predictably, he ended up on the opposite team from Brady, Marcus, and Tyler. "Hey Walker," Brady called across the gym as Coach Brunner dropped the balls at center court. "Hope you've got health insurance." The whistle blew and chaos erupted. Jackson moved with deliberate awkwardness, avoiding the balls without showing too much agility. One by one, his teammates were eliminated, pelted with throws that seemed designed to inflict maximum pain. Soon, it was just Jackson against Brady's crew and two of their friends. Brady held a ball, tossing it from hand to hand. "Nowhere to hide now, Walker. Just throw the ball, Brady," Jackson said quietly. Something in Jackson's calm demeanor must have pricked Brady's ego. His smile faltered slightly before he wound up and launched the ball with all his strength. The red rubber sphere hurtled toward Jackson's face with vicious speed. For a split second, instinct nearly took over. Jackson could have caught it easily, could have sent Brady to the sidelines with a demonstration of reflexes that would have raised questions. Instead, he shifted just enough that the ball grazed his shoulder rather than smashing into his face. "Walker, you're out!" Coach Brunner shouted. Jackson turned to walk off the court, but Tyler had other ideas. A ball slammed into the back of Jackson's head with enough force to knock his glasses off. He stumbled forward, catching himself before falling. "Oops, didn't see he was already out," Tyler said with mock innocence. Coach Brunner blew his whistle. "Reed, that's enough. Walker, you okay?" Jackson straightened, retrieving his glasses. A small crack ran through one lens. "I'm fine, Coach." "Good. Reed, 5 laps around the gym." Tyler groaned but started jogging. Brady caught Jackson's eye and drew a finger across his throat. The message was clear. This wasn't over. After class, Jackson was changing in the locker room when he felt a presence behind him. He turned to find Ash Rodriguez's brother, Ramon, a senior who mostly kept to himself. "You handled that well," Ramon said. "Most people would have lost it." Jackson shrugged. "It's just a game. My sister says they've been targeting you since day one. Why don't you fight back? Fighting doesn't solve problems." Ramon studied him for a moment. "Sometimes it does, though. Sometimes it's the only language bullies understand." Jackson closed his locker. "Maybe, but it's not my first choice." "Well, if you change your mind about standing up for yourself, I've got your back. Brady's crew has been running this school too long." Jackson nodded his thanks and headed to his next class, unaware that things were about to reach a breaking point. The following Monday marked 1 month since Jackson's arrival at Westridge. He'd settled into a routine of endurance. Had Danakum minimize contact with Brady's crew, release tension through training at home. It wasn't ideal, but he'd survived worse. Only 2 more months of school before summer break. He was at his locker between classes when he heard a commotion down the hall. Brady and Marcus had cornered a freshman, a small boy with a Star Wars backpack who looked close to tears. Not my problem, Jackson thought automatically, then immediately felt ashamed. If not him, then who? His father's voice echoed in his head. The purpose of strength is to protect those who don't have it. Jackson closed his locker and walked toward the scene. As he approached, he could hear Brady's taunts. "What's in the special backpack, space boy? Got your little dolls in there?" The younger boy clutched his backpack tighter. "They're collectibles. Please, just leave me alone." "Collectibles," Marcus mocked. "Hear that, Brady? We better be careful with his collectibles." Brady reached for the backpack. "Let's see these valuable items." "Hey," Jackson called out, his voice steady. "Let him go." The hallway seemed to freeze. Brady turned slowly, disbelief written across his features before it morphed into delighted malice. "Well, look who found his voice. Walker the hero." Jackson walked closer, stopping a few feet away. "He's just a kid, Brady. Find something better to do." Brady stepped away from the freshman, fully focused on Jackson now. "Are you giving me orders, new kid? I'm making a suggestion. Take it however you want." The freshman took advantage of the distraction to slip away, throwing Jackson a grateful look as he disappeared around the corner. Brady stepped into Jackson's space. "You know what? I've been too easy on you. Time for a proper Westridge welcome." The warning bell rang, signaling 1 minute to get to class. Brady smiled. "After school. Parking lot. Be there or we'll find you." He walked away, Marcus and Tyler flanking him like loyal guard dogs. Students who had been watching scattered, not wanting to be late, and not wanting to be associated with Jackson, who had just painted a massive target on his back. All except Ash Rodriguez, who approached with an expression somewhere between concern and admiration. "That was either really brave or really stupid," she said. "Probably both," Jackson admitted. "You know they're serious, right? Brady put a kid in the hospital last year. His dad's on the school board, so nothing happened." Jackson nodded. "I figured it was something like that. So what are you going to do?" The final bell rang. Jackson adjusted his cracked glasses. "I'm going to go to class, and then I'm going to the parking lot." Word spread throughout the day. By final period, the upcoming confrontation was the only thing anyone could talk about. Brady had been broadcasting his plans to teach the new kid a lesson he'll never forget. Most students expressed sympathy for Jackson while making sure to secure good viewing spots for the fight. Jackson sat in calculus, his last class of the day, with a strange sense of calm. He'd spent the lunch period in the library, calling his father. "Dad, I might have to break our rule today." His father had been quiet for a moment. "Tell me what happened." After Jackson explained, James Walker sighed heavily. "Sometimes standing up for others means standing up to others. You know the boundaries. Protect yourself, protect others if you can. No more than necessary. I understand. And Jackson, I'm proud of you for defending that boy." Those words stayed with Jackson as the final bell rang. He packed his books slowly, methodically. Around him, students rushed out, eager to secure spots for the coming spectacle. He was the last to leave the classroom. Mr. Parker, the calculus teacher, gave him a concerned look. "Everything okay, Jackson? You seem distracted today." "Yes, sir. Just thinking about a problem I need to solve." As Jackson walked through the emptying hallways toward the back parking lot, he felt a curious lightness. For weeks he'd been carrying the weight of restraint, of hiding, of enduring. Now at least there would be clarity. The parking lot was packed with students forming a loose circle. In the center stood Brady, Marcus, and Tyler, looking like they were posing for a movie poster about high school villainy. Brady was bouncing on the balls of his feet, hyping himself up for the performance. The crowd parted as Jackson approached. He walked steadily to the center of the circle, setting his backpack down carefully. Brady grinned when he saw him. "Honestly, I didn't think you'd show. Ready for your beating, Walker?" Jackson removed his cracked glasses, folding them and placing them in his shirt pocket. When he looked up, his eyes were clear and focused in a way no one at Westridge had ever seen. "I'd like to avoid this if possible," Jackson said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet parking lot. "We can all just go home and forget about it." Brady laughed, looking around at the crowd to share in the joke. "You hear this guy? Now he wants to back out. I'm not backing out. I'm giving you a chance to." The laughter died in Brady's throat, replaced by a flush of anger. "You've been asking for this since you got here." He stepped forward, fists clenched. Time to learn your place. Brady threw a wild haymaker aimed at Jackson's head, a punch designed more for humiliation than damage. To the crowd's astonishment, Jackson wasn't there when the fist arrived. He had shifted almost casually to the side. Brady stumbled slightly from the momentum of his missed punch. He turned, confusion briefly replacing anger. "Stand still, you little—" He charged forward, throwing a flurry of punches. Jackson weaved and slipped each one, his movements minimal but precise. He wasn't fighting back, just avoiding damage, while letting Brady tire himself out. After 30 seconds of this dance, Brady was breathing hard, frustration evident on his face. "Fight back, you coward! I don't want to hurt you, Brady." Those words, spoken not with fear but with genuine concern, ignited Brady's rage. He nodded to Marcus and Tyler, who began to circle around Jackson. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't a fair fight anymore. 3 against 1? Jackson said. "Is that how it works here?" "This isn't a tournament with rules," Brady spat. "This is my school." Marcus lunged from behind. This time, Jackson moved with purpose. He sidestepped, caught Marcus's extended arm, and used the larger boy's momentum to send him sprawling to the asphalt. The move was so smooth, so effortless, that a collective gasp rose from the spectators. Tyler hesitated, suddenly unsure. That moment of uncertainty was all Jackson needed. He closed the distance between them with 2 quick steps, feinted left, then swept Tyler's legs from under him when he shifted his weight. Tyler landed hard on his back, the air rushing from his lungs. Brady stood frozen, witnessing the impossible. The new kid, the quiet, nerdy pushover, had just taken down his 2 friends in the span of 5 seconds without throwing a single punch. "What the hell are you?" Brady demanded. Jackson turned to face him fully, his stance relaxed but balanced. "Just someone who's tired of watching you hurt people." Rage and humiliation warred on Brady's face. With a roar, he charged again, throwing his full weight behind a tackle. Jackson waited until the last possible moment before pivoting, using Brady's momentum and a subtle redirection to send the larger boy flying past him. Brady crashed into a parked car, setting off its alarm. He scrambled to his feet, a trickle of blood running from his nose, his eyes wild with confusion and growing fear. Marcus and Tyler had regained their feet and moved to flank Jackson again. This time, there was no hesitation from either side. When they attacked, Jackson moved with fluid precision, blocking, redirecting, and counterstriking with controlled force. Each movement was economical, designed not to injure but to demonstrate the futility of further aggression. Within moments, both Marcus and Tyler were back on the ground, dazed and disoriented. Brady stood alone, the reality of the situation finally dawning on him. "Who are you?" he repeated, this time with something like awe. The crowd had gone completely silent, every student transfixed by the unexpected display. "I'm just Jackson Walker," he replied. "And I think we're done here." He turned to walk away, considering the matter settled, but Brady, driven by a final surge of desperate pride, grabbed a discarded soda bottle from the ground and rushed at Jackson's back. "Watch out! Someone!" Ash shouted from the crowd. Jackson spun, catching Brady's wrist mid-swing. In one fluid motion, he twisted, using a basic Aikido technique to bring Brady to his knees, the bottle falling harmlessly to the ground. "I said we're done," Jackson repeated, his voice firm but not unkind. He released Brady's wrist and stepped back. Brady remained on his knees, the fight gone out of him. Jackson retrieved his backpack, put his cracked glasses back on, and walked through the stunned crowd. As he passed Ash Rodriguez, she fell into, step beside him. "MMA?" she asked quietly. "Something like that. You could have done that at any time." Didn't seem necessary until today. Behind them, the crowd had begun to disperse, the spell broken. Brady and his friends were picking themselves up, their aura of invincibility shattered. "Why did you finally fight back?" Ash asked as they neared the street. Jackson considered this. "It wasn't about me. When I saw them bullying that freshman, sometimes you have to stand up even when it's complicated." They walked in silence for a moment. "They won't leave you alone after this, you know," Ash said. "Their pride won't let them, maybe. But sometimes things change. People change." The next day at Westridge High was different. When Jackson walked the halls, students looked at him with newfound respect and curiosity. Some nodded, others whispered as he passed. His locker had been cleaned of graffiti. In the cafeteria, he sat with Ash and Ramon, along with a few other students who had previously been too intimidated by Brady's crew to reach out. The freshman with the Star Wars backpack, Sam, Jackson learned, stopped by to thank him again. "Those collectibles were from my dad," Sam explained. "He's deployed overseas. They're kind of all I have of him right now." "I understand," Jackson said, Everybody deserves to have their treasures respected. Brady, Marcus, and Tyler entered the cafeteria late, sporting various bandages and bruises. The usual buzz of conversation dimmed as all eyes tracked their progress. Brady caught Jackson's gaze across the room. For a moment it seemed he might make a scene. Then, surprisingly, he gave a small tight nod before leading his diminished entourage to a table far from their usual central position. "Did you see that?" Ramon marveled. "I think that's the closest thing to respect Brady Wilson has ever shown anyone." Ash studied Jackson with curiosity. "You didn't humiliate them. You could have, but you didn't." "That wasn't the point," Jackson said, unwrapping his sandwich. "I just wanted them to stop. Well, for what it's worth, I think they will. At least for a while." Later that day, as Jackson was leaving his English class, Mrs. Jenkins called him back. "Mr. Walker, a moment." He approached her desk, wondering if word of the fight had reached the faculty. "I noticed something interesting today," she said. "When I assigned group work, no one avoided being paired with you. Quite the opposite, in fact." Jackson shifted uncomfortably. "I guess I'm making friends." Mrs. Jenkins smiled knowingly. "Indeed. And I couldn't help but notice that Mr. Wilson seems unusually subdued today, almost respectful. Maybe he's not feeling well, perhaps." She removed her reading glasses. "You know, in The Count of Monte Cristo, Dantes learns that true strength lies not in revenge, but in how we choose to use the power we have." "Yes, ma'am. I think you understand that better than most students your age." She nodded toward the door. "That's all. Enjoy your newfound popularity, Mr. Walker. You've earned it the right way." In the weeks that followed, a subtle but significant change swept through Westridge High. Brady and his friends maintained their distance from Jackson. Their reign of terror noticeably diminished. Other students, emboldened by what they had witnessed, began to stand up for themselves and each other. Jackson found himself reluctantly cast in the role of defender. Younger students sought his protection, peers asked for advice, and even a few teachers seemed to position him strategically during group activities. "You're like a superhero with a secret identity," Ash teased as they walked home one afternoon. Mild-mannered Jackson Walker by day, martial arts master by also day. Jackson laughed. "I'm not a master, just someone who had good teachers and a lot of practice. You could start a club here, you know. Teach others." The idea had merit. "Maybe next year if I'm still around." "Planning to disappear again?" "No plans either way, but I'm getting used to it here." They reached the corner where their paths diverged. Ash hesitated, then asked, "Would you have fought back if they'd only been targeting you, or was it really just because of Sam?" Jackson considered the question seriously. "I don't know. My dad always taught me that fighting is a last resort, that true strength is shown in restraint. But there's a line between restraint and hiding." "Well, I'm glad you found your line." As Jackson walked the rest of the way home alone, he reflected on his first 6 weeks at Westridge. It hadn't gone according to plan, but then life rarely did. What mattered was how you adapted, how you stayed true to your principles while allowing yourself to grow. That evening, training in the garage with his father, Jackson felt a new sense of purpose in his movements. "You seem focused tonight," James Walker observed, holding the pads for Jackson's combinations. "I think I'm figuring some things out." His father nodded approvingly. "That's what martial arts is really about, not fighting, understanding." Jackson delivered a perfect 3-punch combination, followed by a roundhouse kick that echoed through the garage. "I think I'll start a training club at school next year, help some of the other kids." His father lowered the pads, his expression serious but proud. "The greatest victory is the battle not fought. The second greatest is fighting not for yourself, but for others." Jackson thought about Brady Wilson, about Sam with his Star Wars collectibles, about Ash and Ramon and all the students navigating the complicated ecosystem of high school. "I'm starting to understand that now." The next day at school, as Jackson walked to his usual lunch table, he passed Brady's group. The tension was still there, but different, a wary respect rather than simmering hostility. Brady looked up as Jackson passed, their eyes meeting briefly. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that the dynamics had shifted, not through domination, but through revelation. Brady hadn't been defeated. He'd been shown a different kind of strength, and perhaps in time he might learn from it. Jackson took his seat among his new friends, set his cracked glasses on the table, and began to tell them about his idea for a self-defense club. Not to create fighters, but to build confidence, to help others find the strength they already had within them. In the month since he'd arrived at Westridge High, Jackson Walker had gone from invisible to infamous, to something far more valuable, respected not for what he could do, but for what he chose to do with his abilities. And that, he realized, was the true secret strength all along.